everybody. My name is Ewan Webster. I'm the President and CEO of Thesis Gold. As Gwen said, we are focused in north-central British Columbia. You can see us on the map there. The Thesis Gold, we're dedicated to our ranch project. That's our only asset. You can see it on the right-hand side of the map there. And I've put some of the other key players on the region on that map as well. And you can see some big names, some big deposits, some big mining companies. And there's been about $5 billion worth of M&A transactions in this area in the last 5 years alone. And I really think that's just going to continue over the coming years. And we're certainly very well positioned in that area. The ranch project itself saw a bit of work in the 1970s and 80s, and we picked it up a couple of years ago. Maiden drill program in 2021 was a big success. We confirmed a lot of that historical drilling on the project and also made a number of new discoveries. That success really led to a much more significant program in 2022, where we completed about 5,000 meter spring drill program and then an additional 35,000 meters in the summer. That again was a big success. We've been getting the results out of that program through the last few months, and they've been very strong. You can see some of those on the screen there. 91 meters of just under 2 grams gold equivalent at Bonanza, 17.5 meters of 4.6 again at Bonanza. Some results out yesterday for another zone, the Thesis-V zone, 97 meters of about 1.6 gold. So great results over broad intervals with some very high grade mineralization in the mix as well. You can see some great results there from last year's program, 34 meters of just under 20 grams gold. And this is a high sulfidation epithermal system. Mineralization starts at surface essentially and then extends to depth. Additionally, this year we made another great discovery as well, and I'll go over some of these in a little bit more detail, but you can see the Steve zone there, 120 meters of about a gram gold equivalent, and that is a few kilometers away from those zones of known mineralization that we had been working on and expanding. So just quickly on the corporate snapshot, we've managed to keep our share structure really tight, just under 65 million shares outstanding. And that breaks it down into about 65% institutional support with some great long shareholders in there, Merck, Franklin Templeton, Eric Sprott, to name a few. And then the management team is also very invested in this. We hold about 25% as well. So great shareholder base to really build this project out over the coming years. And we have about 15 million in the treasury at the moment, so very well financed as we look towards another significant drill program this summer. One of the key things I think that make this project really attractive and what drew me to it initially was the infrastructure. As I mentioned, it saw quite a lot of work in this area. This is the Toodoggone mining camp, and it saw quite a bit of work in the 1970s and 80s. And you can see on the map there, basically, you can drive to this project from Prince George. It's about 400 kilometers northwest, passing through Centerra Gold's Kemess copper gold porphyry deposit, onwards through Benchmark Metals, 3.6 million ounce gold silver deposit. And then our ranch project is there at the end of the road. So great infrastructure. There's an airstrip just to the south of us that we use a lot. And there's also a power line tie-in just nearby at the Kemess mine. So very cost-effective exploration in this part of BC. It's also not the rugged coastal mountains that you see outside of the convention centre. It is kind of rolling hills, subdued topography. We get a fraction of the snowpack that they get in the coast as well. So you can operate year-round in this part of BC. Now, if we take a look at the project land position itself, it's about 180 square kilometers, so a significant chunk of land there. We own it 100%, and there's about at least 20 near-surface epithermal gold zones, targets, deposits, and only a fraction of these have ever been drilled, with some of the names up there on the screen, so the Ridge, Bonanza, Bingo, the Thesis zones, etc. And a lot of targets to follow up on, but of those zones in known mineralization, they're all slightly different styles of mineralization. I mean, it's a high sulfidation system, but we wanted to get out ahead of that and see, what does the metallurgy look like in this system? Because they can be tricky at times, but we're seeing 90 to 98% gold recovery, very low cost conventional methods. So essentially de-risking the project as we work towards a maiden resource, likely in early 2024. Now, if we look at some of those zones in a little more detail, right, that kind of core area right at the heart of the project, you can see the inset map on the top left here. So, looking at the ridge bonanza zones in the top right-hand corner, and then the other zones in the bottom left, and what we call the Thesis structural corridor. So the back image there is ground magnetics, and you can see some very nice linear features, and it's really just it's a very large fault-controlled epithermal field, basically. And on the screen there, I've got the historical drilling. You can see the colors and blue dots, basically, and what we did in 2021. And you can see they're kind of isolated zones of mineralization. And that was really the focus of our 2022 program was, do these zones hang together? Can we build out a scalable deposit here? Can we link up that mineralization along those structures? And I think we've certainly demonstrated that is the case at Bonanza and Ridge, and I'll show you that on the next slide, where we're seeing significant strike extent growth there. And then in the southern part along the Thesis corridor, same story. We basically drilled between all of those zones this year, trying to infill that. So that, that Thesis corridor, based on our interpretation, is looking like it's going to work out to about 1.5 kilometer strike extent. And obviously we don't have all the results back yet for that summer program, but very similar styles of alteration and mineralization that we see that in the known zones of gold mineralization. What gives me even more confidence in saying that is the results we put out yesterday from the Thesis-3 zone, that 97 meters of 1.6, that was one of those expansion holes, essentially extending that sub-zone to over about 250 meters strike extent. It's down to about 250 meters depth now, and it probably, there's multiple zones within that, parallel zones controlled by a series of faults within that broader structural corridor. So significant widths, good strike extent, and is evolving into a much larger system. Taking a bit of a deeper dive on the Bonanza Ridge here, just to show you how that all links together. Historically, they kind of re-drilled the same occurrence over and over. Last year, we stepped out from that. We're working a long strike, and the green dots, basically, on the screen there, we've now linked those two zones together along what is northeast oriented structures. And that strike extent, is over 700 meters now. The northwest structures that cross-cut that and offset the mineralization, those are also mineralized. And you can see the one on the left there has about 300 meters of strike extent to it. We made a new discovery that other northwest structure, essentially offsetting the Bonanza and Ridge zones, is also mineralized. I don't have a lot of holes into that yet, but we anticipate some significant strike extent on that as well. So interconnected fault network of broad zones of mineralization. You can trace the mineralization, certainly at the Ridge zone now, down to about 250 meters depth. It starts at surface, quickly evolving into a pretty significant target with good scope and scale. And then really the third objective of last year's program was testing a whole range of new targets. We, are very diligent about a kind of systematic exploration across that land package that hadn't seen it before. So collected soil samples across the land position, rock samples, detailed geological mapping, ground and airborne geophysics. And, out of that came some fantastic targets that really tick the boxes. The Steve zone being one of those. So we poked a couple of holes into that last year, and sure enough, made a fantastic discovery, about 120 meters of a gram gold equivalent. That you can see on the cross-section on the left-hand side there. It's down about 400 meters vertical depth from surface, but it's the same type of alteration as we see on surface. You can see from the grab samples there, they're mineralized as well. I have a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to link that to surface. 220 meters along straight from that particular hole as well was the second hole. It also intercepted the same alteration system, similar grades, broad intervals of mineralization. So again, this particular target is developing into something with real scale that looks like it has significant depth extent to it as well. And that's just one of many exploration targets on the project that share the same geochemical, same geophysical response as the Steve target. So, as we look forward to the 2023 program, I'm going to continue working on expanding those non-gold footprints, but also set aside a significant part of the drill budget to follow up on the Steve discovery and test a number of those new zones on the project. We have about a 40 square kilometer zone of advanced argillic and argillic silicic alteration across that core area. So a lot of targets still to work on there. And, I think this is going to be a very good evolving gold story over the next year or two. With that, I'm over time, so thanks.